Well, folks, Skirmish Season 9 starts today. Finally, right? Our first competitive Blitz format season in over 8 months since last December. And yes, the landscape has changed significantly since that time. More importantly, there are enough Living Legend points on the table this season to completely retire 4 heroes from 0 to 500, and it is thus likely that we'll see more than that leave the format when all's said and done. The big players like Zen and Blaze come in with a nearly clean slate and are poised to eat up a huge chunk of those LL points. But long-standing staples like Dash and Briar also look to cross the threshold, and with the weekly checks, it's bound to be anybody's game by week 3. So today, let's go over the current picture and talk LL projections into Skirmish Season 9. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, my flesh and blood friends. Welcome back to Dice Commando, and go again, a fabulous cast, and thanks so much for tuning in here. It is very exciting because this is the kickoff for our Living Legend tracking and projections and stuff that we do for every Skirmish season. We've done it since 6 or 7. I don't remember. We've been doing it for a while, but that's right. We do it every time, and hopefully when you think Blitz this season, you're coming back here because we're going to do the tracking, we're going to talk points and all that. So welcome, let's get right into it. So what I want to do first is go through the points breakdown, the events breakdown, and then we'll talk the weeks. And then we'll end, that's right, trademark Andrew's spreadsheet going through, and then we'll actually talk projections and where we think people can potentially land, not just at the end of the season, but week over week. Because remember, we have that weekly check on Monday night, Tuesday morning, whatever it may be for where you're at. So what you see up here first, this is the breakdown for the overall Skirmish season. So there are 625 total Skirmish 9 events listed in Gem, 450 of which are Blitz. Okay, so that's 72% of them are Blitz, and that is, remember, chosen by store. So that's pretty exciting that, 3/4 of the world-ish is in on that, right? We've seen, folks saying, my more mature communities tend to be in Living Legend. And that's completely fine. That's what those folks want to do. Just a reminder to those folks that maybe going both ways, because new players want to come do Blitz, and eventually you got to keep growing your community. But dad lecture aside, let's get into this, okay? So with those 450 points at 5 points per skirmish win, that lands us with 2250 total points available, okay, for this season. So now let's go ahead and head over to the week breakdown. So you can see that here. Now, I do want to define something. I saw someone else who had a spreadsheet like this. Our numbers overall match, that the way that we broke down the weeks does not match. And I want to explain the way I break down the weeks. So the season starts on basically Friday night. It actually starts technically on Saturday, but the way the world is, right? So you have the first weekend, and then there's an LL check. That said, the LL check, even though it's posted that hero or those heroes will have LL'd, it doesn't go into effect until Friday. Thus, if there are midweek events, those heroes are still able to earn points before they technically become not playable on Friday. Okay, so thus I have defined my week as being from basically Friday to Friday, right? So even though the Living Legend check happens on Tuesday, there are still points that can carry and thus can go to them, and you do have to account for that, because that weighting can take away from other heroes regardless of the LL status, right? So that just understand that's where this is, okay? So week 1, we have 181 events for 905 available points. That's almost enough to LL2 from 0 to 500. Week 2, we then have 875 points, which is also a lot. Then week 3, with only 93 events, but 465 points. Now, you'll notice this doesn't actually add up, because there's one event that's currently scheduled for September 23rd, which is clearly a mistake because that's outside the season. Maybe they got some exemption or something like that. I don't know. But it's currently scheduled for that, so I didn't know what week to put it in, but I want to make sure that we accounted for it overall, but it does not fit into the weeks, okay? So that's what we're looking at, 905, 875, 465. So you'll note, and this is very relevant for the LL discussion, that week 1's the biggest one. Right. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, week 1 and 2 are pretty balanced, right? But the front 2, those are where the points are at. All right, so let's go ahead into the, this is a modified spreadsheet of sorts. I cut off the bottom so that you all would be able to see it. Let's just be honest. There are a lot of, I think it's 42. Yes, I'm pretty sure it's 42 legal heroes in Blitz if you count Terra and Aurora, I believe it's 42. I will confirm that with the overlay. I don't know why I can't remember that number, but either way, it's a lot. And no, they're not all relevant. Okay. So what I have here is the breakdown, and we'll kind of talk through how to read the spreadsheet, but you'll notice that I also highlighted a couple heroes in a blue color. And that is to help me draw my eye when we're talking about them in the spreadsheet. So what you see there is obviously their name, but then you have the season start points and the points remaining, right? What they need to LL. So you see Dash and Briar both basically matched at roughly 430 for about 70 points to go. We then have Rhinar at 300, needs about 200 points. Zen is at 35, basically a full run to make. Blitz is at 5, basically a full run to make. And let's not forget about Victor. Okay, Victor needs about 400 points, give or take, right? 390 points. So in that second kind of middle column there, I have the number of wins that they need, and then the overall percentage of wins that they need to take down this season with which to Living Legend. Okay, so to be clear, that wins is not number of points they need, right? It's the number of tournaments, number of skirmishes they have to win. Okay, so Dash and Briar both need 15 wins this season to carry them over, which means both of them would need to get just over 3% of the total wins. To me, that seems very doable over the course of the season. Probably doable week 1, right? Something you need to remember about Skirmish, again, as we kind of talked about, a lot of the mature communities have gone to LL. So you have a lot of, more community-based, a lot of more fun, casual-based stores around the globe who have communities that reflect that. So you have a lot of chances to have different metas than just like Zen Smash Face, right? So I do think it's very realistic that Dash goes. Briar is a maybe for some reasons that we'll talk about. Well, let's just talk about it now. Assassins are in a good spot because of the strength of Zen, and Briar is kind of taking flack from that. So I think Briar's actually stepped down a little bit. I wouldn't be shocked at all if she goes week 1. She's very good. There's a lot of people with a lot of reps on her. That said, I also wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't, right? So I think that one's very interesting to track. Rhinar needs just shy of 9, so he needs 40 wins, which is just shy of 9% of the season. That's actually a pretty big number when you really think about what we might be facing with some of the heroes below. So I'm going to actually put Rhinar as a maybe, and I think it's pretty safe that you're going to be able to play Rhinar at least probably into week 3. I think. Obviously we'll have a better picture when I come back next Tuesday, or maybe Wednesday morning, depending on when the announcement comes out. But once we get the LL points, I'll come back. Then we'll have a better idea of what Rhinar looks like. But with 10% across a pretty strong field, that seems tough to do in 2 weekends, right? Because the thing with Rhinar is he was kind of like the high roller, just like knock you out guy. But here's Zen, right? Now, Victor, I don't think... So Victor needs 78 wins at, let's just be honest, 18. Well, I guess it's closer to 17, but 18% of the wins this season. Victor doesn't seem likely. It seems to me that he will probably do well, but I don't know that he can get 18% of the wins, I guess is my point. So he probably ends up somewhere in like the high 3s to 400s, again, depending on how fast Zen and Blaze do their thing. If Blaze does her thing, right, meaning if she ascends, depending on how fast they do that, will really depend on what happens to Victor, right? Because then you'll kind of get the top tier. We'll go basically back to, that's basically what I'm thinking is going to happen here is Blaze and Zen seem like the best. If they leave, then we kind of go to what we would have considered tier 1 2-3 months ago, which puts Victor in a very, very, very good spot. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not underselling Victor at all. There's a reason that I intentionally saved him to the last one that I did of that whole Blitz series for that very reason. He's very good. The card advantage is very strong in this format. Now, that takes us to Zen. So Zen needs to get 20%. Now, it is funny because if you look at that 20, so it's actually closer to 21% with 93 wins. But if you look at that and you're like, Andrew just said 18% it seems too high for Victor. Yes, it does seem too high for Victor. 20% seems very doable for Zen over the course of the season. Okay, now let's go ahead and skip ahead to the cumulative season projections, which you see there on the right. Okay, they weren't super relevant for the other heroes. We can go back and talk to them in a second just to kind of put things in perspective. But Zen would need to win 50% of the skirmishes week 1, a little over that actually, to go. It seems crazy, but I actually think it's doable. I know, but probably what's going to happen is Zen will be probably a little short week 1, because if you go and look by week 2, he would have only needed to win 26.1% of the events, and that seems pretty doable. Zen winning 1 and 4 seems doable. And then, of course, at the end, right, by week 3, him getting 21% seems very plausible. Okay. Now let's go to Blaze. Her numbers, of course, are higher because she's lower, but they're not all that different. But when you then put in perspective that she's not quite as explosive, she's very good. Like, she's like really good. But I don't, and this is keeping in mind that I am biased because I want her to go this season, right? But I don't know that it's going to happen until week 3, and I think a lot of that will depend on what happens with Zen. So again, we're going to have I don't know that we'll have a good idea of what Blaze will do week 1, but maybe by week 2, I think we'll have a better picture. That said, she could potentially, depending on what happens with Zen, she could potentially be gone week 2. So there's a lot of very interesting things going on here. Now, if we go back to the top in terms of Dash and Briar, I think they're the most relevant to talk about. I mean, I already said the thing with Rhinar. If you really look at him across the three-week projection, Rhinar getting 22% week 1 seems unreasonable. 11% week 2s, but 9%, again, depending on what happens with the others, seems possible. Okay, but if we go to Dash and Briar, 8% week 1, that seems high. It could happen with Dash. I don't think it'll happen with Briar, but 4% by week 2, I would say it's relatively safe bet that they're gone. I would say it's relatively safe bet that if they're gonna go, they'll go week 2. And I now that I'm thinking out loud, I literally thinking out loud, figuratively thinking out loud. I actually think Dash probably could go week 1. I don't know. Eight's a lot. So anyway, those are the top players as I see them here. You're welcome to go down the list and look for your particular. Oh, actually, I did want to give a shout out to Prism, actually. So Prism is sitting at just over 300. Prism is actually in a really, really, really good spot right now just because of how the meta has shifted with Zen and Blaze doing their thing. So, and not Blaze as much, but more Zen. So she would need 13% overall. So I don't think she goes this season, but she seems like she's potentially in a good spot. The question is, do people show up with her? I think is going to be more the question. And then I think you have this other problem within Blitz of a lot of the Prism players are almost divided, right? Because both Prisms are legal. And, Advent of Thrones with OG Luminaris is pretty gross. So I do think the Prism players probably end up splitting themselves because a lot of them bringing Prism versus like bringing Zen or something, they're going to be more loyalist type people, I would think. So I think they split their community, and I think the points don't move as fast. Right now, Arachne Solitary Confinement is way at the bottom. He's the third from the bottom. He's not highlighted. He needs 99 wins to go. It's because he has 9 points. He's just shy of only needing 98, but that's how the cookie crumbles. He would need 22% this season. Not going to get them. However, I do think Arachne is going. I think ASC is going to get points. I don't know. What's going to be interesting is whether New or him will get more points in terms of that disruptive kind of slot. Because I think, if you look at Victor doesn't play, reacts real well, kind of goes down to like really struggles against reacts with Warrior and Arachne and New, and then anybody who can't deal with the disruption like Zen and stuff like that, I think don't do super well. Dash can kind of carry some pistol stuff, so I think she does a little better, but still it's hard for her to avoid that. So I do think that there are definitely some edge case scenarios where people who are really good either on New or ASC can probably slip in there. Now, New is not on this list, but you can figure out the math with zeros, what they're going to need to get, right? Over 22%. So anyway, I think that pretty much tells the story. I'm super excited to see how this plays out because, so going into Skirmish Season 8, with the points change, I had a video about it's going to be a bloodbath. The difference this time is I don't think it's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be a reckoning because, last time we were poised to lose maybe 2 or 3 heroes, and we lost 3, I believe, maybe 4. Actually, I think it was 4. I take that back. It was 4. But so we said it was going to be a bloodbath. But this time we could potentially lose, almost certainly we'll lose maybe 5 heroes, right? So Dash and Briar are potential. Zen, I think, is a slam dunk to lose him of the season. Blaze, maybe not. She'll be close. But the points have to, and actually that's fair. We might only lose 3, maybe only 4. But then you're going to have just a whole bunch of people just sitting there and waiting for Skirmish 10 come December. So should be very interesting. And I will catch you all back here. Well, I'll catch you back here before then for other stuff, but I'll catch you back here on this topic next Tuesday or maybe Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in, and go Commando.